Okay, welcome to episode 50 of the iPad podcast, and this is Sunday, April 17th, 2011, and this is Lex at maxfuture.com, and I'm going to go over all sorts of interesting stuff that's going on with the iPad, my favorite device. So here we go. Okay, so the first story is possibly what's going to be the future of the iPad, and the future of the iPad could have 3D on your iPad. And you say, how is that possible? Well, Mac Stories tipped me off to this story, and basically a video was put up on YouTube by some people in France. I believe the people behind this technology are a guy named Jeremy Francone, Laurence Neguet at the Laboratory of Informatiques of Grenoble. And basically what they devised is a means to fool you into believing you're seeing 3D. So I'm going to show this video, and hopefully if you've got the video version of the iPad, you'll see what's going on, but I'll explain it to those who are just on audio. So basically it's called Head-Coupled Perspective on Mobile Devices, and they figured out a way to have the camera track where your eyes are when you're looking at the iPad. And because the iPad knows where your eyes are, it can change the graphics or the shapes that are on the iPad to fool you into thinking you're seeing 3D. Because let's say you have, in the video, there are like these building blocks or squares with faces on them. And as you tilt the iPad, the lines that make the cube change, creating the illusion that you've got 3D. Now you have to see the video. The video, if you search Google, YouTube, is called Head Tracking for iPad Glasses-Free 3D Display. Then they show these like items, like these round, swirly red and white circles that are held up on like a stem, and it creates the illusion as you're moving it around that there's 3D. Now, how is this possible? Because if you change the shape of what you see based on where your eyes are, you can fool your eyes into thinking that you can see the sides of an object. But really, it's all on a flat surface. So it's a fantastic illusion. It's called, again, Head-Coupled Perspective on Mobile Devices. It says in the YouTube thing, we track the head of the user with the front-facing camera in order to create a glasses-free monocular 3D display. Such spatially aware mobile display enables to improve the possibilities of interaction. It does not use the accelerometers and relies only on the front camera. The demo with the targets has been inspired by the work of Johnny Lee. So look, this is just, it's amazing. It's gotten over 1,275,000 hits on YouTube. And a lot of people think Apple should just buy this technology and just build it in, because imagine the kind of apps that you could have with this 3D. What if you had like a map, with buildings? You could sort of turn around the iPad and see all the perspectives of the building. So, this is just, I really think Apple should, license this technology and build it into the, the APIs. Because it's really compelling. So check it out. Okay, so the iPad as well as the iPhone may have become even more of an enterprise device. And there's a story that has come out, and I read about this story on electronista.com. But if you're familiar with the Square app and the Square device, word comes to us that Square and the people behind it have made a deal with Apple so that the Square device is now on the Apple Store online, and it'll be in retail stores. And what does this mean? Well, Square was founded by Twitter co-founder Jack Dorsey, and SquareUp.com is the website. And what Square is it's this little device that plugs in to the audio part of an iPad or iPhone. And if you're looking at the video version of this, I have a little picture of it. And the Square device, the original one, is white, and it's really, really small. It's like a teeny little dongle, and it has an audio plug-in that goes into the audio connection where the headphones go in an iPad or iPhone. But what it does is somewhat revolutionary, because the Square device is essentially a credit card reader. And the people at Square give this to you for free if you create an account with them. And what it means is it makes you like capable of accepting credit card payments from people. And they give you a free app that's on the iPad and on the iPhone, and it turns the iPad into essentially a credit card acceptance device. What this means is that people who provide services, small businessmen or vendors, no longer have to go through the credit card companies to get one of those machines or devices that accept credit cards. And also it's very cool because customers who pay by credit card with your little Square device plugged into your iPad can sign their name or their signature on the iPad or the iPhone. So this is really tremendous, and Square gives good rates that are really better rates than what Visa or Amex or the other people give to get one of those devices. So this is great for vendors, you know, those green market vendors who you see selling plants or vegetables or, I don't know, fruit. And before they would have to get cash, and a lot of those devices for credit cards that the credit card companies make, you need to be connected by landline or a phone, a lot of them. But this you just have to have an iPad or iPhone, and you could be out and about and accept credit cards. Now, one guy I follow on one of the blogs, he does a consulting service where he'll come over and help you back up your computer or, you know, show to set up your computer. Well, now he can accept credit card payments just on his iPhone or iPad. So this is a big announcement. Now, the way it works is because it's free, Apple is actually selling the Square device for $10. And if you buy it and you activate an account with SquareUp.com, which is behind the device, they'll give you $10 credit. So Apple obviously is taking a cut of that $10. So SquareUp is probably losing money just in the sale of these devices. But frankly, if you end up using their business, they get a percentage of your transactions, and the percentages are pretty reasonable. So what does Square charge to process transactions? Well, it's very simple. They just charge 2.75% for all swiped transactions. That's it. There's no activation fee. There's no gateway fees, no monthly fees, no early termination fees, no hidden fees, no additional cost to use Square. Now, when it first came out, they had like a minimum charge if it was, you know, under a certain amount. And that sort of reduced your ability to use the device, let's say for just like $1 or $2 sales. But they got rid of that. And so it's really a deal because you can have any size transaction and it's 2.75%. Now, you can enter cards manually in it. If you don't swipe the card, it costs 3.5% plus 15 cents per transaction. But the whole point is you should be able to swipe. You know, and this is, you know, basically the flat rate that is highly competitive. So check it out. So actually, if you go to the Apple Store online, you can see the Square credit card reader is already there and listed, and they're selling it for $9.95, and it ships in 24 hours. So it's, you know, this is going to really help that company. It's really going to take off. So if you go there, you can see the different, I'm clicking through the different devices, and there's a black color and white color. I have the white color because when it came out, it was just all in white. And you can see right here, you know, it's a very small device. And, you know, you instantly receive $10 credit when you activate it. Essentially, it links to your bank account. That's how it works. So it works with the iPhone 4, the iPhone 3GS, the iPad 2, the iPad first generation, and the iPod Touch fourth generation. So I'm very excited by this because I think it just further shows how the iPad will be extremely helpful in the business environment. Okay, well, some of you may think the iPad is a toy, and some may treat it like a toy. And of course, in some ways, it does feel like a toy because you can play all these great games on the iPad. Well, word came out on Saturday, April 16th from 9to5.Mac that the ultimate toy distributor, Toys R Us, was going to start selling the iPad 2s, the 16 gigabyte and 32 gigabyte Wi-Fi models, starting on Sunday, April 17th. And sure enough, it's correct. It's correct that Toys R Us today on Sunday, April 17th is selling the iPad. So CNET, the website CNET, confirmed that Toys R Us are selling iPad 2s, but they warn getting one is a different story. And they basically say that Toys R Us already sells a lot of iPad accessories, and they're going to be selling one. But they said don't expect to waltz into Toys R Us today and get one. And they point out that in the Los Angeles area, only select Toys R Us stores got a shipment of iPad 2s. In northern Los Angeles, for example, only a couple of stores got the iPad 2. So, you know, it's very bleak. They point out the situation isn't much better at Apple stores. The Manhattan Apple store had no stock of iPads on Sunday, and the store representative said they generally sell out every day. So, look, you know, to the extent it's distributing somewhere else, that's helpful. But the bottom line is there's incredible demand for the iPad 2. So if you could find it in any store, you're lucky. On the apps, in the App Store, Bloomberg Businessweek Plus gives the following description as to what you get in there. You get additional like multimedia content. You get to listen to Tom Keen's Econo Chat and Charlie Rose interview. You get the latest market information and news on companies mentioned in articles by tapping on the name of the company. You get to read in either portrait or landscape mode. You can search across all issues. You can create your own personal archive and access it from any issue. And you can manage your issues, deleting past issues, and it doesn't affect your personal archive. You can resize fonts. You can share articles via email, Twitter, and Facebook. And you can quickly and easily discover content by using the global table. And each week's issue is available from 10 p.m. on Thursday, New York time. And you can download it and get a free issue of the magazine if you want to check it out. Now, I haven't checked it out. I might go download the free version. But, you know, I'm sort of comforted by the ratings so far in the App Store. It's gotten almost 4.5 stars out of 177 ratings. So let's see. What are some of the most critical? I always go to the most critical ratings. Okay. So here's some of the most critical ratings. One person gave it 1 star and said, I have a paid subscription for over 30 years, yet the app doesn't recognize my account number or my mailing address. Okay, that seems like a glitch. But so far, you know, I only see 2 1-star ratings out of 100, I guess out of 42 comments. So out of 42 comments, only 2 people gave it 1 star. And then it just pops to 4 stars. So it looks like generally people are pretty happy. Here is like a 4-star rating that's, you know, in there. It says, I think iPad mags and newspapers go too far trying to be interactive to a fault. I enjoy the simple text with a few options. The credibility and perfect pricing point have sold me on this subscription. So people seem to be pretty happy with the price of this subscription. Another person who gave it 4 stars says, amazing content, but I miss the magazine layout. I spent the last 30 minutes comparing this to the Zinio version, and the Zinio version wins hands down. With Zinio, I actually feel like I'm reading a magazine. Unfortunately, this app does not retain the magazine feel. However, he goes on to say, this app, however, definitely wins out on price. You can buy the print version for about $10 to $15 cheaper than the Zinio price, and you get full access to this app. Huh. That being said, I still might switch back to Zinio. So another person says this blows away Zinio. So look, people seem to like the price. It's worth downloading the free one subscription version. I'm a little sanguine on any of the magazines because I don't know. I just don't. There's too much interaction and multimedia and different layers and different tabs. And if Bloomberg's app is simple, I might be enticed to get it because I like simplicity. That's why actually my favorite reading, really, if not the iBook or the Kindle app on the iPad, it's just the Safari browser. Okay, so one of the more, I guess, kooky criticisms of the iPad has come from a politician, Jesse Jackson Jr., and this story broke, I guess, on today, April 17th, 2011. And I saw this on Business Insider. Has the headline, Jesse Jackson Jr. makes unbelievably ignorant claim that the iPad is killing American jobs. And I guess his complaint was that we're losing jobs to people making iPads in China. And, Business Insider says that he's ignoring that all the wealth the iPad has created in America. And I think there's some misconception here, which is, yeah, a lot of the iPad is put together in China, but those are the very low-end paying jobs. I mean, the Chinese are paid very little, and they're just paid to assemble the iPad. But all the intellectual property, all the real value to the iPad is made in the United States. Apple employs thousands and thousands and thousands of employees to design the iPad, to design the software, and all of that, and also to figure out how to put hardware together. Look, if this was true, then we would have Chinese companies making better products than the iPad and shipping them here, but they're not. Because what makes the iPad better than any Chinese knockoff is the intellectual property and the value that Americans working in Silicon Valley add to make the product better. So, I think we're in a global economy. There's going to be some things that are made overseas and then some things that are made here. And what Apple shows is that we can lead the world in intellectual property. And intellectual property is, smart designers, smart engineers, putting things together, and then having people who don't have that experience and talent, maybe assembling the products overseas. So, it's an interesting criticism. Okay, so if you have a Verizon iPad, Apple, it looks like, released a fix for you on April 15th. And I learned of the story from various sites, but if you're watching the video version, I'm looking at padgadget.com. And basically, the new update is iOS 4.3.2. And the main thing that it does, it fixes some issues experienced by users during FaceTime calls, such as frozen videos or random pictures displayed by the app. And as for the 3G version of the iPad 2, the update will help users to connect to 3G networks faster, especially when traveling abroad. So if you have any problems, and I think this is mainly for the iPad 2 Verizon, I have the AT&T version of the iPad 2, and I'm having no problems. But it's version iOS 4.3.2, and if you are having any problems with your 3G connection, you should download, and through the app iTunes connection, you just go into iTunes, connect your iPad, and just upgrade it and download it. Okay, so who could be a real competitor to the iPad 2? Well, Marco Arment, who is the founder of Instapaper and a former lead developer of Tumblr and has his own blog, marco.org, had an interesting post on April 15th entitled Speculation on an Amazon iPad Competitor. And he really seems to think that Amazon, of all companies, is really poised to make a real competitor to the iPad and through its Kindle. And he makes a lot of legitimate points. He envisions that, hey, they could come out with a 7-inch tablet, Amazon, named something like the Kindle Color or the Kindle Tablet or the Kindle Touch, that it would be Android-based, but with Amazon's media storefront apps and that you would be able to download the App Store to your Kindle and have it pre-linked to your Amazon account, and that Amazon could go with very aggressive pricing, let's say $200 to $300 with an entry level mode subsidized with $100 ads. And he seems to think that Amazon is poised to do this, because if you think about it, Amazon already has a great online digital store where for years it's been selling all sorts of items. So it has your credit card information. It's easy to buy books electronically online. And now you can upload your music to Amazon, and any music or videos you buy will be put into a digital locker. So Marco's point is that Amazon actually knows consumers and knows the retail experience much better than Google, and much better than those entities selling tablet devices, and they already have a tablet, which is the Kindle. Now the Kindle currently is really just for reading, like books or some electronic magazines. It's only black and white, but Amazon could subsidize like a color Kindle that is Android based, and then it would really compete with Apple. So I think that's very viable. I think if anybody could really compete with Apple, it's Amazon, because Amazon knows how to do a retail experience. However, where Amazon has a challenge, it doesn't really have a history of making devices. The Kindle is actually pretty much the first device that Amazon has made. They're really just an online service. They provide online hosting, but in terms of selling a device, the Kindle is it. And it's a pretty low-end device and low-end technology. The real challenge for Amazon would be to make sort of a high-end tablet like the iPad that can compete with it. But if Amazon can make something that is significantly better than the current Kindle and has the ability to run apps and only costs $200 and is 7 inches, I could see that further expanding its Kindle market. I'll be honest with you, I see the Kindle everywhere, because now Amazon has this version of the Kindle where if you buy the Wi-Fi version of the Kindle with ads, they'll knock $25 off of it. And so Marco Arment speculates that Amazon is testing that concept of subsidizing a device by having ads run on the screen. And I think he doesn't think that's the end of what Amazon's going to do. And maybe that is Amazon's plan, is to test to see how well consumers react to some subsidy in exchange for ads on a device. But I think Marco's dead on in the sense that Apple has to view its competitors to be not only Google, not only Samsung, not only Motorola, not only Hewlett-Packard, not only Microsoft, but also Amazon. So we'll see what happens in the coming year. So how is Apple doing selling iPads? Well, Apple Insider reports that at least one analyst named Brian White at Ticonderoga Securities claims that Apple could sell 45 million of its touchscreen tablets this year. And apparently this guy is on a 6-day, or was on a 6-day, on the 6th day of his tech trip to China and Taiwan, and he claims in his meetings with component suppliers, sources have revealed expectations that Apple will sell between 40 and 45 million iPads in 2011. And he said he heard those same figures in a separate visit to Asia last fall, but at that time this number was difficult for many investors and some in the media to get their heads around. So that would be well beyond the 30.9 million units that White has forecast that Apple will sell in 2011. So other analysts had said, like Charlie Wolf at Needham & Company said he saw Apple selling 30 million iPads, and a guy at RBC Capital Markets said 28 million iPads, and a guy at DigiTimes also cited an industry source in March who suggested Apple could sell 40 million. So, in comparison, Apple sold 15 million first-generation iPads. So, I think anything's possible because look at the demand. I mean, the iPad is still sold out. You still have to wait weeks to get it. There are still loads of people waiting in line trying to get them and then resell them overseas. So I think it's very, very possible. Okay, so if you're into jailbreaking or if you're into showing, your apps on your iPad or iPhone, you might be happy with this little update. Brian Petrick, the jailbreak developer, released yesterday an update to his jailbreak app Display Recorder. Now it's version 1.2. And I posted a first look video on YouTube. And basically, here's what's good. What's good is you can now screen record on your iPhone or iPad and save your screen recording on the iPhone or iPad and then edit it with one of the movie apps like Reel Director or iMovie for the iPad or iPhone. And why is this big? Well, before, the display recorder could only screen record like, on your iPhone or iPad and then transfer it to your Mac to edit it and then upload it to YouTube. Now, you could upload it directly to YouTube, but you would have no sound because the screen recording only records the screen, not the sound. And if you wanted to narrate, like, how to use an app or a game that you played, you wouldn't be able to narrate it on the iPhone or iPad. But the beauty is Ryan Petrick now upgraded Display Recorder so that it can save files or record files in an experimental mode. The experimental mode allows it to record files in H.264. And why is that significant? Because before, you could only record an AVI file, and Apple's iPad and iPhone doesn't support watching AVI files. So for some reason, I guess that was maybe it was a cheaper format, or for whatever reason, that's what Ryan Petrick made with the Display Recorder app before. So I've had Display Recorder for like over a year, and I've used it to record, screen record on the iPad and the iPhone, but I was always frustrated by not being able to edit it and add narration and sound on the iPhone or iPad. So the big news is now you can save it in H.264, and I already tried it out, and I was able to then import it on my iPhone into the iMovie app or the Reel Director app. Now, I haven't tested it out on my iPad, but it's still useful for my iPad because I could screen record something on my iPhone. And then, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but if you connect your iPhone to your iPad by the dock connector, the photo app on the iPad will import your photos and video from the camera app on your iPhone. So theoretically, what this means is you could, this is going further to the vision of having an iPhone or iPad that doesn't need a Macintosh or another computer for you to be productive and to make content. One of the criticisms of the iPad and iPhone are that they're not content creating. And actually, I'm finding more and more it's farther from the truth. The iPad is getting more and more self-contained. Now, the reason I haven't tested this out on the iPad is because the current iOS, the reason I haven't is because the jailbreak people haven't figured out yet how to jailbreak untethered the iPad 2. An untethered jailbreak for the iPad 2 would mean that if you shut down the iPad, you can launch it in jailbreak mode again without having to launch it through a computer. That's what makes it untethered. But I'm sure the jailbreak people are going to soon come out with a unlocked jailbreak for the iPad 2, and then I'll put Screen Recorder 1.2 on my iPad 2 because, frankly, I'll then be able to demonstrate apps better for you. I'll be able to edit them on the iPad and then upload them to YouTube, or just complete my project while on the go. So in this video on YouTube, which I'm playing on the video version of this, I'm showing I edited some of the screen recordings in Reel Director, which is a competing app to iMovie, and it's very, easy to do. So, if you're into that sort of thing, I think it's only a few bucks. And I find Ryan Petrick, who's a Canadian, to be very reliable. He obviously upgraded the display recorder app. It's been out for more than a year, and this is probably the most significant upgrade. And, I recommend it. Okay, so now one of the books I'm reading today on my iPad that I bought in the iBookstore on the iPad is a book by a very prominent tech writer named Stephen Levy, entitled In the Plex, How Google Thinks, Works, and Shapes Our Lives. And I haven't jumped ahead in the book, but other, writers online have. And they basically came across an interesting fact. And I'm at a website called androidapps.com. And someone basically has an article entitled, Did Steve Jobs Really Hide the iPad Development from Former Apple board member Eric Schmidt? And basically, I guess it's in this book, Eric Schmidt, who was the CEO of Google for a long time, was also on Apple's board. And for a long time, Apple was allies with Google. And in some ways, Steve Jobs was like a mentor to Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the founders of Google. He was nice to them. And Google had a board seat on Apple, and actually they shared some common board seats. But the story is that Steve Jobs became really outraged and felt betrayed by Eric Schmidt and Google when Google developed the Android phone and started using the the pinch to zoom feature that's on the iOS, that's also on the iPad. And according to this this book, Steve Jobs hid the iPad development from an Apple board member, Eric Schmidt. He didn't trust him. Now, at some point, Eric Schmidt, voluntarily left the board. But it says here, Jobs became angry when he saw a prototype of Android with pinch and zoom features and chose to keep the development of the iPad a secret from Schmidt, who was also on Apple's board of directors at the time. So that's very interesting. It's kind of rare for a CEO of a company like Apple to hide information about something that is a strategic, like the development of a new product, from a board member. But this is one of the tensions you have when companies have interlocking board members, and then you have an independent director who's also on the the management or the board of a competing company. And so, I'm not surprised that Steve Jobs hid it from Eric Schmidt, and I'm not surprised that Eric Schmidt had to leave Apple's board, because it's clear that Apple and Google are now competitors, at least in the tablet and the smart device sphere. Okay, so should you upgrade from an iPad to an iPad 2? And my advice is, if you really like your iPad, you should definitely upgrade to the iPad 2, because it's just much better than the first iPad. I do think it's significantly better. And a guy over at CNET News, I think has the same view that I do. He's got an article out on April 16, 2011. His name is Brooke Crothers, entitled iPad 2 Killer Features, the two times factor. Now, it's interesting. When I saw the headline, I thought he was going to mean by 2 times factor the fact that you can run iPhone apps on the iPad in 2 times mode. No, what he means is that it's much faster. You have double the memory. It goes from 256 megabytes on the original iPad to 512 megabytes in the iPad 2, and he thinks that makes a difference. And he points out, think about, this is him talking, here's a quote, think about the terabytes, petabytes of advice over the years from tech experts that implore people to upgrade their PC's memory to get better performance. Well, it's true. More memory provides more space for more apps to reside in, which can then be accessed by a high-speed RAM. And then he gives an everyday example. Web browsing is more fluid. I know this has something to do with the upgraded processor, which I'll get to below, but more memory is also playing a big role here. More specifically, Safari's version of tabbed browsing on the iPad 2 works better. And then he points out that when you jump between web pages, a page that you haven't visited in a while often doesn't have to reload. That's a boon when I'm doing productivity-related stuff and otherwise making browsing more enjoyable. And that's exactly right. I mean, the response time is better. He then points out the other doubling, the doubling of the cores. The iPad 2s, he says, has an A5 processor, which is a dual-core processor, compared with the single-core A4. And then he goes on to say this by far is the most significant aspect of the iPad 2 and often overlooked or downplayed because it's considered too techy. What's a core? Remember, when I bought my first dual-core PC, he says, for me it was the single biggest step up in PC performance I had ever experienced. So, you know, there's something else that he's, I think, missing out on, which is the video processing performance is 9 times faster. So I think one of the reasons we're seeing just so many big sales of the iPad 2 is because it's just a step up from the iPad in terms of performance. Imagine what it's going to be like next year when the iPad 3 comes out, which has an even faster processor. I truly think you're going to see the decline and maybe even wiping out of the PC world in Windows. Okay, so the evidence coming in so far seems to indicate that the iPad's amazing growth is hurting Windows PC sales. And earlier this week, Gartner and IDC, which track sales, say that globally in the PC world, there has been a global decline in the quarter. And apparently this was Gartner's Mikako Kitagawa, and I'm on a website now called asimoko.com, which has a story about this, basically says that PC shipments declined in the U.S. for the 3rd consecutive quarter. IDC also said that there was a decline, and it was on the growth of media tablets. Well, so the decline was 2%. But here's the thing. This guy did some work, and if you factor in and treated iPads as a computer, which it is, actually, while the Windows-only computer units are down 2%, OS X-based computers, that would be Macintoshes and iPads, would be up 272% in the quarter. And he did this calculation himself. He excluded iPhones and iPod Touches. So if you think of the iPad as a computer and the Macintosh as a computer, though that niche of the computer market is up 272%, while the Windows overall PC market is down 2%. So, you know, I think we're going to see this trend. I mean, I think eventually enterprise is going to start embracing the iPad as it becomes more powerful. You know, the fact that you can now mirror out the iPad to any screen that takes HDMI or DVI out means you can dock the iPad and make it a computer. You know, you can use a Bluetooth keyboard with the iPad 2, and you can use an external monitor with the iPad 2. So somebody, you know, I predict somebody's going to make a dock that allows you to just dock the iPad 2 and have a keyboard and a monitor, because it seems so natural. Okay, one cool gadget you might want to get very soon is an iFi SD card for your camera. Now, iFi is that company that has these little SD memory cards that you can put in your DSL camera. You know, let's say you have a Nikon, D90, and it allows you to, through Wi-Fi, transfer photos from your camera to your computer. Well, clearly some people are viewing the iPad as a computer and not just a mere tablet, because iFi, according to the story at Wired.com, in Gadget Labs, iFi has launched yet another Wi-Fi SD card to coincide with the debut of something called Direct Mode, which is the most exciting thing, according to Wired, to happen to SD cards since iFi started putting tiny radios in them in the first place. So basically, Direct Mode turns your card into a peer-to-peer Wi-Fi access point. Thus, the iPad as well as iPhone, as well as any other device, can access it directly. So you'll be able to beam your photos directly from your camera to your iDevice, including iPad, using an iFi iApp. Now, iFi already has an app for the iPhone that transfers photos wirelessly to a computer. But what this means is you're going to be able to, without using a connecting dock or the connecting wire, carry around a camera that has this card, and when you want to, wirelessly transfer the photos to your iPad as well as iPhone. Now, it's going to be a little pricey. The card's going to cost $100, but the point is this technology is changing so rapidly that people who say that the iPad is not a real computer are nuts, because more and more it's becoming independent from a computer. So I can't wait for this thing. I don't use my camera a lot. I mean, it would be nice if this technology comes to the iPhone, so that, if Apple should buy the iFi technology and put it into the iPhone, because it would be great if you could just, through Bluetooth, beam photos from your iPhone to your iPad. In one way, you can already beam photos from your iPhone to your iPad. That's if you email them. If you have 3G connections both on your iPhone or iPad, I often just email some photos from my iPhone to my iPad. But it would be nice to have other means of communication that are wireless, like Wi-Fi, like Bluetooth. So, hey, it's a step in the right direction. Okay, so earlier this week, RIM's Playbook was reviewed by a number of reviewers who got a hold of it, because the Playbook is coming out now. Remember, it's a 7-inch device made by RIM, the makers of Blackberries. And there's a lot of people who use Blackberries, particularly at work. So a lot of people think that, RIM might have a chance to compete with the iPad. And the website mercurynews.com, it's a newspaper, did a roundup of some of the big reviews on the web. And I'm looking at their website. Their characterization of what David Pogue of the New York Times said is this. He's quoted as saying, quote, "The Playbook acts as a giant viewing window onto the contents of a BlackBerry phone. Whatever email, calendar, address book, and instant messages are on the BlackBerry now show up on the Playbook's much roomier screen, a live encrypted two-way link," end quote. Walter Mossberg at the Wall Street Journal says, quote, "This first edition of the Playbook has no built-in cellular data connection and lacks such basic built-in apps as an email program, a contacts program, a calendar, a memo pad, and even RIM's popular BlackBerry Messenger chat system. To get these features with your $500 Playbook, you must use it with a nearby BlackBerry phone connected to it wirelessly over a short-range Bluetooth connection." And Rachel Metz at the Associated Press says, "Nobody has been able to match the iPad thus far, but the Playbook, the first effort from BlackBerry smartphone maker Research in Motion, has emerged as one of the strongest contenders." And apparently, when these reviews came out, Bloomberg News reported that the price of Research in Motion stock fell 91 cents. So maybe investors aren't too thrilled with this. Personally, I have a lot of issues with the Playbook. Okay, so here are my issues with the Playbook. For one, it's only 7 inches in size. So, it's about the size of a Kindle. And so I think that's going to be a real drawback because, let's face it, the Playbook is really going to be attractive to people who are in enterprise and business who already have a BlackBerry. But if you want to read documents, and that's why I think people in enterprise are going to want a Playbook, is to surf the internet and read documents. 7 inches isn't really a great size. You would rather have, if you're going to have to lug around something else, you'd rather have something that's like the size of an iPad. The other problem is that you have to have to be connected by the Playbook to the BlackBerry to get internet connection, but also to get your connection to Outlook and email. So that's a pain because I don't like to keep my Bluetooth on, and also Bluetooth pairing can be a pain, and Bluetooth drains the battery. So, every time you're going to have to make a choice if you have the Playbook and the BlackBerry. Do I sacrifice battery life to always be wirelessly connected to the Playbook, or do I shut it off? But then it's a pain to put it on. So that's the second problem, is this tethering. I mean, they should have the email and the calendar on the Playbook. The other problem is there's just limited applications. If you have limited applications, why would you, the Playbook's not an Android operating system, and it's obviously not iOS. So there's going to be a real dearth of applications, and there's a good chance the applications are going to be more expensive because RIM has a history of, not being inexpensive in terms of the price of the apps that it sells. So we'll have to see how it does. Obviously, they're relying on enterprise sales, and but I'm a little doubtful. I don't really think this is going to be embraced the way the iPad is. Okay, so if you like Wired magazine and you have an iPad, and previously you paid for an edition of the monthly magazine, you may want to go download it now, because Wired announced on April 15th that for the month of the May edition of Wired's nearly year-old iPad app is free to download for the month. And usually I guess it costs $4 for the download, but I guess it's a it's a promotion to attract first-time customers. So it's a free sample. So you might want to check it out. Frankly, I'm not going to pay $4 an issue. I think that's too much. I can, $4 times 12 is $48 a year. And Wired in paper version, you can get a discount that, a yearly version is much cheaper than $48 a year. So, if magazines like Wired want me to, buy this digital subscription or a download, the price has to be less than what I would pay in a year-long paper subscription. And I think they have to understand that. That's going to be the only time that it really takes off. Okay, so the stories about people tracking down their stolen or lost iPhone continue. And most recently on April 13th, the Washington Post Local had a story entitled GWU Sophomore Tracks Down His Stolen iPad and Alerts Police. And that's George Washington University, in case you don't know universities. The story was written by Jenna Johnson, and this is what Jenna writes. Hugo Schechter returned to his George Washington University residence hall late Saturday. His unlocked room had been ransacked. His iPad, laptop, and emergency stash of cash were missing. Schechter, 20, a sophomore from England, soon filed a police report. He complained to friends on Facebook and Twitter. Then he logged onto MobileMe, an Apple program he installed on his iPad that tracks the device. At first, it didn't work, probably because the iPad was powered down. But then on Sunday night, it flipped on. Schechter hit track, and he said instantly found himself peering at a Google map showing a house in Landover where his iPad was mysteriously moving from room to room. Schechter posted a photo of the house from Google Earth on his Facebook page and told his Twitter followers, "Currently tracking my iPad. It's in Maryland." A few of his friends, he said, were gung-ho about storming the stranger's house and taking back the iPad themselves. But Schechter said it was difficult enough to call his mother in Britain to explain that he was robbed. He didn't want to call her from a hospital bed because of a Rambo-style operation gone wrong. And then the article says, "At first the police were skeptical," this is quoting him, "when I told them exactly where my iPad was, the address, the room in the house," end quote, said Schechter, a sports management major. But on Monday, a D.C. police officer ventured to the house in Prince George County, and a few hours later, Schechter tweeted, "Just picked up my iPad from the station. Pretty awesome." Schechter said the police told him that they had apprehended a man at the house who said he had purchased the iPad from someone else and provided a detailed description. Schechter said police are looking for that person. And then the article goes on to say the D.C. police spokeswoman confirmed that the department is investigating the case along with GW campus police, but said she could not comment on an ongoing investigation. Goes on to say college students are often easy targets. So this is interesting. I mean, I'm not going to go through the rest of the article, but it's interesting because I guess a lot of people stealing iPhones and iPads don't realize that it can work with a tracking device like Mobile Me. But, you know, there's other tracking devices, too, that work, and some of them are open source and free. Okay, so another app that you could use to track your iPad for free is Google Latitude. Google Latitude's a free app from Google, and it's really for the iPhone, but it'll work on your iPad 3G also, and basically it can track your location in the background. So it says that it'll work even when the app is closed or your device screen is locked, and it'll update, and then you can go on the website like Google Latitude and track to see where your device is. Now, the thing to do maybe is there's a lot of free GPS tracking apps in the App Store. So maybe what you do is you have Mobile Me track you, you have Google Latitude, and that way if somebody steals it and steals your iPad and shuts off Mobile Me, maybe they won't be aware that Google Latitude is also tracking the device or some other apps. You know, now anybody who's smart who steals an iPad should frankly just reset all the settings immediately because there's so many different apps that could track it in the background. What would be great if somebody finds a way to make a jailbreak, maybe there is such a device or such an app, a jailbreak, it would be great to have like a jailbreak app that somehow, I don't know, tracks your iPad or iPhone even if you reset it. Now, I don't know if that's possible, but that would be the ultimate way to make sure that you get back your device. It would be like the LoJack for iPads. Now, I've been reading more on the iPad. I said another book regarding, you know, Google and the history of the company. But there's an interesting article on PCWorld.com entitled "Longform Reading Thrives on the iPad." And this article, which came out on April 12th by Joel Mathis of Macworld, basically does a survey and basically says that actually long-form reading is actually doing very well on the iPad. And he says, consider the success of the iBooks and Kindle apps on the iPad, which typically rank among the most downloaded free offerings in the iOS App Store. But he also points out there's been a proliferation of other offerings that make it easy to curl up and spend an afternoon with the iPad. And this is a really good article because it gives you an overview of all sorts of interesting stuff. He points out that there are these great aggregators that aggregate interesting content from sites, such as Arts and Letters Daily, which is the best known and longest lived aggregator. But then he also points out that Instapaper and Read Later have inspired a younger crop of sites devoted to featuring and popularizing the best long magazine form writing. And he points out, for example, sites like longform.org and Give Me Something to Read and Long Reads. and he points out that their Twitter feeds are great additions to Flipboard apps. Now, I have the Instapaper app, and what's great about Instapaper is the new version of Instapaper is that it recommends content to read, but I'll get to that. Now, this article goes on to say that there's other great sites like thebrowser.com's Best of the Moment app called BotMHD, which merits some attention, and I guess that collects some good information. But then he points out that, like if you have the Kindle app, Amazon's new Kindle Singles is a line of short ebooks that you can buy and download, and that they typically cost only $2 to $3 a piece. And there's and you can read those on a wide variety of apps of devices. He also highlights the Atavist app, that's ATAVIST app, which is aimed squarely at users of the iPhone and iPad. The app is free, but it lets users buy long-form stories within the app for just $3. And then, there's apps like McSweeney's, which has been available in the App Store for a long time. And the latest edition of McSweeney includes small e-bookstores that offer novels individually formatted for the iPad and iPhone. And then he goes on to say there's the Narrative, which is a free app from Narrative Magazine, which contains top-notch essays, stories, poems, cartoons, and contributions from writers such as Sherman Alexie, Tobias Wolff, and William Carlos Williams. And, he says one downside of that app is you can't share free stuff. And then he goes on to say there's the Storyville app, which costs $5 for every 6 months of use, but each week brings a new short story to the app from independent publishers, and it features some pretty good writers like Ben Greenman and Anthony Doerr. So I guess the point of this article, it's opened up my eyes. I've been definitely reading more on the iPad and iPhone books, and I generally buy either from the Kindle app or the iBookstore app, but I just find myself, reading a lot because it's just such an easy way to read because you can store so much and capture it later. So very cool. Okay, so finally, I just want to remind people, if you like reading, you should really think about downloading the Instapaper app. It costs $4.99, and I think it's worth it. It's a universal app, so for the same price, it works on the iPhone and the iPad. And basically, it works with the web. You get a free Instapaper account, and you get a little button that you can put on your browser, whether it's Safari or some other browser. And as you read articles, you can save them, and they'll go into your Instapaper account. And I believe there's a free version of Instapaper, but the paid version allows you to organize your things you want to read later in folders on your app. And the beauty is it's synced. It'll go straight to your app on your iPad and your iPhone. Now, why would you want to do this? Because often you're browsing, you read a story, and by clicking Instapaper, it'll strip out the ads and put into nice text, which will go online into your Instapaper account or into your iPad or iPhone. And that's great because you can read stuff later. Now, it's been upgraded recently, Instapaper by Marco Arment, and one of the cool things it has now, it has a section entitled Editors. And if you don't have something to read, you can go to different content that's in Instapaper that's been curated around the globe. So, for example, there's a website, I guess, called Long Reads, which has in-depth stories that are best enjoyed away from your desk. The Browser, which was mentioned in that last piece that I discussed, in longform.org. Plus, there's something called Give Me Something to Read, which is Instapaper's official selection of the finest articles and essays saved by customers, handpicked by a human editor with a very good taste. So look, I'll pick that, and let me just mention, like the first article that I see when I pick that is Secrets of Tax Prep Business from Gary Rivlin on Mother Jones. And let's see, the next article is a Wired magazine article, One Professor's Attempt to Explain Every Joke Ever. Another article is Chris Canyon's Doomed Quest to be Wrestling's First Openly Gay Star. Now, the other thing about Instapaper is this. I find that it gets around the New York Times paywall. As some of you may have heard, the New York Times went to a paid model, and it's sort of a hybrid paid model. It'll give you 20 free clicks a month on articles. You can read 20 articles on the web, but after 20 in a month, this like blocking thing comes over it and blocks you from reading a story that you read. Now, there are other ways to get around it on the web. There are these free little buttons that you could put on your browser that get rid of the blocker, called New York Times Clean. But here's the weird thing. I find that when I'm in the New York Times and I block, and an article is blocked and I click the Instapaper button, the entire content goes to Instapaper. So I'm not sure if the New York Times realizes how easy it is to get around its paywall, but for now at least, the Instapaper app, you can put stuff in it even when it's been blocked. So look, it's a very cool app. I use Instapaper all the time. The beauty is it'll save the content to your iPad or iPhone, so when you don't have an internet connection, you can read articles later, like when you're on the subway, or I don't know, if you're in a tunnel or something. So it's very cool. Okay, so that's episode 50 of the iPad podcast by Lex Starr at Max Future. And wow, it's been a year that I've been doing this iPad podcast. Everybody, thanks for listening. It would help if you guys went in and gave some sort of positive reviews on iTunes. That way more people could find my podcast. Again, I'm doing this podcast without any commercials, and I'm trying to prevent any sort of chit-chat or sideshows. I'm doing it by myself. I know I could have a guest on and all that and banter, but I'm trying to keep this upbeat just by doing it by myself, going through stories that relate to the iPad, passing on any useful information or useful apps. And so I would appreciate any positive feedback you can give me on iTunes. And again, if you want to leave a voicemail, you can leave a voicemail at 617-826-9676, or you can email me at maxfuture@gmail.com. Again, thanks for listening, and see you next week during episode 51.